My daughter laughed at my new husband, calling him a charity case while her lawyer watched me like a vulture. She thought I was just a helpless old woman. But she missed the signal my husband gave me under the table. That night, a stranger warned me they planned to strip me of everything within 30 days. I did not panic. I simply unlocked the safe containing the billion-dollar empire she never knew I owned. My name is Marjorie Caldwell. But to the people of Briarhaven, I am just Maggie. At 58 years old, I have perfected the art of being invisible. I drive a sedan that is 10 years old. I wear cardigans that have seen better days. And I live a quiet life that most would call boring. They see a widow past her prime, a woman whose world has shrunk to the size of her garden. They have no idea who I really am. I sat across the table from my new husband, Daniel Royce. He was 60, a man built from solid oak and silence. He was a retired firefighter turned carpenter, and even in his Sunday suit, he smelled faintly of pine shavings and old smoke. He looked out of place in the Lark and Anchor, with its crystal glasses and overpriced lobster. But his rough hand resting on the white tablecloth was the only honest thing in the room. Then there was my daughter. Tessa sat opposite us. Her lips painted a shade of red that likely cost more than my monthly utility bill. She was 34, beautiful in a sharp, predatory way, and she was currently swirling her wine while looking at Daniel with open disdain. "Oh, come on." "Mother," Tessa said, her laugh tinkling like broken glass. "You have to admit, it is a little, sad. Getting married at your age, it screams desperation." She turned her cold eyes to Daniel. "And you," she said, smiling a smile that did not reach her eyes. "You really hit the jackpot, didn't you? A roof over your head and a lonely old woman to cook for you. It is like a reverse gold digger situation. Did you check her bank account first? Or was the house enough, Tessa?" I said, keeping my voice trembling and soft. "Please, Daniel is a good man. I am just looking out for you." She snapped before leaning in, her voice dropping to a faux whisper. I worry about you. Mom, you are vulnerable. You are not as sharp as you used to be." She was not alone in her ambush. To her left sat Grant Whitaker, her fiancé of 3 years. He was a 38-year-old real estate broker who looked at houses and people only for their liquidation value. To her right was a man I had never met, Corbin Slate. He wore a suit that cost thousands, and he watched me with the dead, calculating eyes of a vulture waiting for a pulse to stop. He was not eating. He was assessing. "Mrs. Caldwell," Corbin said, his voice smooth and oily. "Tessa tells me you have been having some memory lapses lately." I blinked, feigning confusion. "Lapses?" "Forgetting things," Tessa interjected quickly, exchanging a glance with Grant. "The other day you forgot where you put your purse. And Grant and I were wondering, did you sign any papers when you went to the doctor last week, just by accident? Maybe something you did not read fully." Suddenly, I felt a pressure on my wrist under the table. Daniel's hand had clamped around mine. It was not a hold of comfort. It was tight, urgent, and hard. He was squeezing my bone. It was a signal. Danger. I looked at Daniel. His face was impassive, but his eyes were alert. He sensed the trap closing around us before I even saw the cage. We left the dinner early. The drive back to our cottage was silent, the air heavy with unsaid threats. Later that night, as the wind howled off the Atlantic, my phone rang. It was a blocked number. I answered, my hand trembling slightly. Mrs. Caldwell, a distorted, synthetic voice whispered. They are filing for emergency guardianship tomorrow. They have a judge in their pocket. If they succeed, you will not be allowed to touch your own money. They are preparing to strip you of everything within 30 days. The line went dead. I stood in the darkness of my kitchen. The trembling in my hand stopped instantly. I straightened my back, shedding the posture of the frail widow. I walked to the back of the house, to the hidden wall, safe behind the linen closet. I spun the dial. Left to 10, right to 25, left to 4. The heavy door clicked open. Inside, there was no jewelry, no small stash of cash. There was only a thick blue file stamped with silver letters, Halcyon Meridian Holdings. Tessa thought she was stealing the meager savings of a senile old woman. She had no idea that the mother she mocked had built a private equity empire worth billions. She did not know that I used to hunt financial criminals for the federal government before I retired to this quiet life. I closed the safe and locked it. I would not fight them openly. Not yet. You want a helpless old woman. Tessa, I whispered to the empty room. I will give you one. I would play their game. I would let them think I was losing my mind. I would let them walk right into the trap. And when the 30 days were up, I would snap it shut. Decades ago. Before I retired to a life of pruning hydrangeas and baking scones. I was a forensic auditor for a federal oversight agency. I spent 20 years tracking money through the veins of shell companies and offshore accounts, hunting down white-collar criminals who thought they were smarter than the system. You do not lose that instinct just because you start wearing orthopedic shoes. You never stop reading the fine print. The morning after the ominous phone call, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. I logged into the patient portal for St. Brigid Medical Center. My hands were steady as I scrolled through the upcoming appointments. There it was. Next Monday at 9 in the morning. A cognitive capacity evaluation with a Dr. Wallace Pryor. I had never made that call. I had never even heard of Dr. Pryor. Daniel walked into the kitchen, wiping sawdust from his hands. He poured himself a coffee and leaned against the counter, his face grim. Maggie, he said, his voice low and serious. I placed him. That lawyer. Slate. I knew I had seen those shark eyes before. 10 years ago. The Garment District fire. He represented the landlord who burned the place down for the insurance payout. He is not a family lawyer. He is a cleaner. He makes problems disappear for bad people. I nodded slowly. It made perfect sense. Tessa was not just being difficult. She had hired a professional predator. I opened my bank statements next. I scanned the lines, looking for anomalies. It did not take long. For the past 6 months, there were small, recurring charges of $49.99, labeled simply as consulting fees. They were small enough to be overlooked as a subscription or a service fee, but they were bleeding me dry 1 drop at a time. It was a classic technique. Siphon off just enough to test the waters, to see if the victim is paying attention. Then, my inbox pinged. It was an email from Tessa. The subject line read, "Prep for Monday." But when I opened it, my heart hammered against my ribs. It was not meant for me. She had accidentally hit reply all on a thread we had shared months ago about Thanksgiving dinner. The body of the email was short. Make sure the doctor sticks to the script. She gets confused in the evenings, so we need to emphasize the sundowning symptoms. If she passes the memory test, we move to the agitation angle. I stared at the screen. She was scripting my dementia. They are writing a play. I whispered to Daniel, turning the screen so he could see. And I am the star. Daniel's jaw tightened. I am calling a private investigator. We can stop this now. No, I said, closing the laptop lid with a soft click. If we fight now, they will just change tactics. They will claim I am paranoid. That is a symptom too. You know, we need them to commit. We need them to think they are winning. I picked up my phone and dialed Tessa's number. I took a deep breath and let my shoulders slump, forcing a tremor into my voice. Tessa, I said when she answered. I just saw an email, but I don't understand it. And I can't find my calendar. Did I forget something again? I feel so scattered lately. Oh, Mom. Tessa's voice dripped with fake sympathy. Don't worry. You are just tired. I set up a little checkup for you next week, just to make sure you are okay. You trust me, don't you? I suppose so. I stammered. I just feel so lost. I hung up. The act dropped instantly. I looked at Daniel. She took the bait. That afternoon, I called Reba Klein. Reba was a digital forensics expert I had worked with back in the agency days. She owed me a favor from a case in 1998 involving a senator and a hidden server. Reba, I said, I need a localized server and audio surveillance installed in my home. Passive recording. Encrypted cloud backup. And it has to be admissible in court. Trouble, she asked. Family reunion? I replied. By evening, I had a plan. I walked to the refrigerator and took a black marker from the drawer. I wrote the number 30 on a yellow sticky note and slapped it onto the stainless steel door. What is that? Daniel asked. A countdown, I said, looking at the number. 30 days until they think they will own me. Every day. I am going to give them exactly what they want. And every day. I am going to record every single lie they tell. The attacks became public on a Tuesday. I sat on my porch, scrolling through social media on a burner phone my daughter did not know I possessed. Tessa had posted a photo of me looking disheveled in my garden, a photo she had taken months ago after I had spent 3 hours weeding in the sun. The caption read, "Heartbroken to see my mom deteriorating like this. Vulnerable women make such easy targets for men looking for a free ride, praying for clarity." The comments were a flood of pity for her and venom for Daniel. They were painting him as a predator and me as his senile victim. It was a masterclass in narrative control. An hour later, Grant sat on my floral sofa, spreading documents across the coffee table like a dealer laying out a winning hand. It is just a formality. Maggie, Grant said, pushing a thick document toward me. This is a durable financial power of attorney. It just means if you know, have one of your episodes. Tessa and I can make sure the bills get paid. We don't want you losing the house because you forgot to write a check. The language in the document was broad. It gave them the power to sell assets, liquidate accounts, and change beneficiaries. It was not a safety net. It was a robbery authorization. Corbin Slate was there too, sitting in my husband's favorite armchair. He leaned forward, clasping his hands. Mrs. Caldwell, Corbin said, his voice dropping to that patronizing register people use for children and the infirm. You need to be realistic. Daniel has no assets. If your health declines, who manages your estate? Him, a carpenter. You sign this to let your daughter protect you from impulsive decisions. I picked up the pen. I let my hand hover over the signature line, inducing a violent tremor. The tip of the pen tapped rhythmically against the paper. I squinted, pulling the paper closer, then pushing it away. I can't read the fine print. I stammered, looking at Tessa with wide, watery eyes. The letters are swimming. I need to sleep on it. Can I answer you tomorrow? Tessa sighed, a loud, impatient sound. Fine. But Mom, we are running out of time. They walked out to the driveway where Daniel was washing his truck. Tessa stopped right in front of him. She did not lower her voice. Enjoy the truck while you can. Daniel, she spat. Once the guardianship goes through, we are evicting you. I won't let a fortune hunter pick the bones of my family. Neighbours were watching. Mrs. Higgins across the street paused her watering. Daniel did not shout back. He simply wrung out his sponge, his face made of stone. He looked past Tessa, locking eyes with me through the screen door. His eyes asked the question we both knew the answer to. Is the trap deep enough? Yet, not quite. Tessa stormed back to the door. If you can't handle your affairs... Mom, maybe staying here isn't safe anymore. I have been looking into Briarcrest Haven. It is a senior living facility, very high-end. I know the director. They can ensure you don't wander. My blood ran cold. Briarcrest Haven was not a resort. It was a warehouse for the elderly, known for high sedation rates and restricted visitation. If I went in there, I would never come out. Corbin was packing his briefcase on the porch. As he turned to glare at Daniel, the flap of his bag fell open. I saw a manila folder near the top. It was an intake form for a psychiatrist named Dr. Pryor. The patient name was typed clearly, Marjorie Caldwell Royce. I had never legally changed my name when I married Daniel. I was still Marjorie Caldwell. They were already falsifying my identity on medical records to create a paper trail that matched their narrative. I felt a surge of genuine grief. My daughter was not just greedy. She was erasing me. The tears that welled up in my eyes were not entirely fake. Tessa, I cried out, grabbing her hand. Please, don't put me in a home. Don't leave me. I will do whatever you say. I just want to be with my family. Tessa pulled her hand away, but she smiled. It was the smile of a winner. Then prove you can be cooperative, she said. Take the evaluation. I wiped my eyes with a trembling hand. Okay, I whispered. I will go. I will see the doctor on Monday. Monday was the 12th day on my countdown. I watched them drive away, their taillights fading into the dusk. They thought they had broken me. They did not know that by agreeing to the evaluation, I was finally inviting them onto the killing floor. St. Brigid Medical Center smelled of antiseptic and hidden agendas. I walked between Tessa and Corbin Slate, flanked like a prisoner being transferred to maximum security. They stood too close, their shoulders brushing mine, creating a physical wall that separated me from the rest of the world. Daniel tried to step into the elevator with us, but Corbin extended a hand, palm out, stopping him cold. Family only for the intake. Mr. Royce, Corbin said, his voice flat. Hospital policy. You can wait in the lobby. Daniel looked at me, his jaw tight. I gave him a nearly imperceptible nod. He stepped back, but I saw him pull his phone out as the doors slid shut. He was not going to the lobby. He was going to document every face, every badge, and every shift change on this floor. Inside the waiting room for suite 304, Tessa held out her hand. Give me your bag and phone. Mum, she said. You don't want to lose them in the exam room. I will hold them. I handed over my leather purse and my smartphone without a fight. Tessa smirked, thinking she had just cut off my communication with the outside world. She did not know that Reba had cloned my phone's operating system to a cloud server 2 days ago. Every text Tessa deleted, every location ping she tried to hide, was being mirrored in real time to a hard drive in Reba's basement. As we walked down the corridor, Corbin leaned in toward the intake nurse. He thought I was out of earshot, distracted by the artwork on the walls. Cognitive decline profile, he murmured, keeping his voice low. Priority on signature confirmation. We need the capacity waiver signed today. I kept walking, my face blank. They were not here for a diagnosis. They were here for a rubber stamp. The door to the exam room opened, and a man in a white coat stepped out. My stomach turned over. It was Dr. Wallace Pryor. I recognized him from a federal bulletin I had read 5 years ago. He had lost his license in Ohio for falsifying competency evaluations for wealthy estates before resurfacing here in New Jersey. He was not a doctor. He was a hired gun in a stethoscope. Mrs. Caldwell, Dr. Pryor said, smiling with too many teeth. I am going to ask you a few simple questions. I sat on the paper-covered table. I decided to play a dangerous game. I needed to look confused enough to keep them confident. But I needed to leave a forensic trail that would destroy Pryor's credibility later. Can you tell me what year it is? Pryor asked. I hesitated, letting my eyes dart around the room. Is it 1999? No. Wait. 2001, Pryor scribbled on his clipboard, satisfyingly loud. Tessa let out a dramatic sigh from the corner. Okay, Pryor said. Now, count backward from 100 by sevens. This was the trap. A truly demented patient could not do it. If I answered correctly, it would contradict his diagnosis of severe decline. If he wrote down that I failed when I actually passed, and I could prove it later, he would be committing fraud. I looked him dead in the eye. 93, 86, 79, 72, 65. I recited the numbers with the cold, rapid-fire precision of the auditor I used to be. Pryor blinked. His pen stopped. He looked at Tessa, confused. I immediately slumped my shoulders and went back to playing the confused old woman. I used to be good at math. I mumbled. Did I get it right? Pryor recovered quickly. He checked a box on his form. I knew he marked failed anyway. That checkmark was going to be the nail in his coffin. After the session, Corbin pulled a document from his briefcase. Since you are having these good and bad moments, he said, sliding the paper onto the medical tray. This is just a temporary emergency guardianship. It lets Tessa handle the doctors for you so you don't have to worry. Just sign here. Maggie. It makes everything simple. I took the pen. My hand shook violently. I pressed the tip to the paper and signed Marjorie A. Caldwell. Tessa smiled. She did not notice. I never used my middle initial on legal documents unless I was under duress. That signature was invalid. It was a beacon for any forensic handwriting analyst. We walked out to the parking lot. Daniel was waiting by the car, his posture tense. As we approached, a man in a grey hoodie walked past us, moving fast. He bumped into my shoulder, hard. "Watch it," Tessa snapped. The man kept walking, but I felt the piece of paper he had pressed into my palm. I closed my fingers around it, hiding it inside my sleeve. Once I was safely in the passenger seat of Daniel's truck, away from Tessa's prying eyes, I unfolded the scrap of paper. The handwriting was jagged and hurried. Tessa is not the leader. There is someone above her. I looked out the window at my daughter, who was laughing with Corbin and Dr. Pryor by her luxury SUV. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I had thought this was a family tragedy, a daughter's greed gone wrong. I was wrong. Tessa was not the architect of this nightmare. She was just the door they were using to break into the vault. This was an organized hit, and I was the target. The next morning, the digital trap we had set began to snap shut. Reba called me on the encrypted line, her voice tight with the thrill of the hunt. She had traced the IP address that was logging into Tessa's email account. It was not coming from my daughter's apartment, nor from Grant's real estate office. It is a firm called North Point Fiduciary, Reba said. They bill themselves as a family office service, but their digital footprint is massive. Tessa is not writing those emails. Maggie. Someone at North Point is logging in as her and scripting the correspondence. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. This was professional. While Reba dug into the firm, I discovered Grant's move. My phone alerted me to a new listing on a private real estate network, a notification I still received from my old investment days. It was my beach house. Grant was trying to sell it off-market using a pocket listing, and attached to the digital file was the emergency guardianship form I had signed yesterday. He was using the Marjorie A. Caldwell signature, the invalid one, to rush a sale before I could contest it. I showed the listing to Daniel. He did not look surprised. He sat me down at the kitchen table, his face grave. "Maggie," he said, resting his rough hands on mine. "I did not want to scare you before, but I know how this works. Back when I was volunteering, I saw this pattern. We called it the unholy trinity: isolation, medication, liquidation. They isolate you from your support system. They medicate you to prove you are incompetent. And then they liquidate the assets to pay for their own services. That is what Grant is doing. He is cashing out before you even know you are bankrupt." I nodded, absorbing the blow. "Then let's speed them up." I logged into my primary bank account and transferred $50,000 into an old savings account I rarely used, a sacrificial lamb. Then, I placed my phone on the counter, knowing the microphone was compromised by the malware Reba had detected. "Daniel," I said loudly, pitching my voice to be clearly audible. "I just moved some money to the savings account." I wrote the password down. "It is Bluebird65. I hope I don't forget it." I waited 10 minutes. Then I checked the logs. There was a login attempt on that account from the North Point IP address. They had taken the bait. Reba called back an hour later with a revelation that made the blood drain from my face. "You are not going to believe this," she said. I ran a corporate background check on North Point Fiduciary. It is a shell. The majority shareholder is hidden behind 3 LLCs, but I pierced the veil. It is Corbin Slate. My daughter's lawyer was not just representing her. He owned the company that was about to take control of my money. He was the judge, jury, and executioner of my financial life. I went to the family safe again, needing to ground myself in something physical. I pulled out Tessa's old records, looking for anything that might explain how she got tangled up with these people. I found a scanned copy of her birth certificate from 34 years ago. I had looked at this paper 1,000 times, but today, with my auditor's eyes, I saw something new. The section for informant or filer had a faint digital artifact line, as if a name had been whitened out and typed over. Before I could analyze it, Reba sent me one last file. It was a recovered document she had scraped from the trash folder of the North Point server. The file name was chilling. Caldwell Timeline Day 1 to Day 30. I opened it. It was a script. Day 12. Medical Evaluation. Day 15. Public Humiliation Event. Day 20. Emergency Court Filing. They were not reacting to my decline. They were directing it. I needed to look my daughter in the eye. I drove to Tessa's apartment, leaving Daniel behind to guard the house. When Tessa opened the door, she looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed. For a second, I saw my little girl again. "Mom," she asked, guarding the door. "Tessa?" I said, making my voice soft and defeated. "I am tired of fighting. I saw the listing for the beach house. It is okay. You can handle it. I will let you manage everything, just... Please tell Grant to stop humiliating Daniel. That is all I ask." Tessa's shoulders dropped. She exhaled a long breath, visibly relieved that her mother had finally broken. "I knew you would understand eventually," she said, stepping back but not inviting me in. "It is for the best. We just want you safe." "I know. I lied. I just want this to be over." "It will be," she said, checking her watch nervously. "My uncle at the fund. He says once we get the final order, everything settles down." I froze. "Your uncle?" I didn't know Grant had an uncle in finance. Tessa's eyes widened, realizing she had slipped. "Oh, not Grant's. He is sort of a mentor to me. Malcolm. He has been helping me structure the trust." "Malcolm?" I asked, my heart stopping. "Malcolm Rusk." "Yes," she said, confused. "Do you know him?" I felt the ground sway beneath me. I did not just know him. 20 years ago. Malcolm Rusk was the hedge fund manager I had investigated for a massive pension fund fraud. I had destroyed his career and sent his partners to prison. He had sworn he would make me pay for every cent he lost. Tessa was not just greedy. She was a pawn in a revenge plot that had been simmering for 2 decades. And the man pulling her strings was the most dangerous predator I had ever hunted. The party was not a celebration. It was an autopsy performed on a living patient. Tessa called it a recovery gathering, a chance for my friends to wish me well. In reality, she had filled my living room with her own social circle and a few of my nosiest neighbours to witness the spectacle of my decline. I stood by the fireplace, clutching a glass of sparkling water like a lifeline. Across the room, Daniel was moving through the crowd with a silver tray of hors d'oeuvres. Tessa had forbidden him from changing into his suit. She insisted he wear a white button-down and black slacks, making him look indistinguishable from the catering staff. "Excuse me?" I heard Tessa say loudly, snapping her fingers at him. "You missed a spot over here. My guests are hungry. Chop chop." Daniel froze. The room went quiet. He looked at her, his dignity immense and silent, before slowly walking over to offer the tray to a group of snickering real estate agents. "He is helpful, isn't he?" Tessa laughed, addressing the room. "It is so hard to find good help these days, especially the kind that sticks around for the benefits." My blood boiled, but I knew what I had to do. I caught Corbin Slate's eye. He was standing in the corner, holding his phone up, the red recording light blinking steadily. It was showtime. I took a step forward and deliberately caught the toe of my shoe on the rug. I flailed, letting the crystal glass slip from my fingers. It hit the hardwood floor with a violent shatter, sending water and shards everywhere. "Oh," I cried out, bringing my hands to my mouth. I didn't see the rug." I don't know what happened. Oh, Mom. Tessa sighed, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. Again. We just cleaned the carpet. A ripple of laughter went through the room. It was not warm laughter. It was the sharp, jagged sound of people enjoying a disaster that was not their own. I looked down, feigning shame, while Corbin zoomed in on my trembling hands. Suddenly, a woman in a navy suit approached me. I recognized her immediately. It was Sarah Jenkins, a board member of the localized literacy fund I had anonymously donated $2 million to last year. Mrs. Caldwell? She asked, squinting at me. You look so familiar. Did we meet at the Halcyon Gala in New York? You look exactly like the donor who panic spiked in my chest. If she outed me now, the trap would fail. I don't know what that is, I stammered, backing away. I have never been to New York. I am just Maggie. I get confused sometimes. Sarah looked at Tessa, who rolled her eyes. My mother has a vivid imagination, Tessa said smoothly, but she rarely leaves Briarhaven. Sarah nodded, losing interest, and walked away. I exhaled. While the room was distracted by the clean-up, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a vibration pattern I had set for Reba. It meant motion detected. Office. Grant was upstairs. I could not see him. But Reba's cameras were capturing everything. Grant was currently rifling through my desk, photographing my tax returns and the fake ledger I had planted in the safe. He was documenting the chaos of my finances to prove I needed a conservator. Corbin Slate took the opportunity to slide up next to me while Daniel was on his knees picking up glass. Corbin leaned in, his breath smelling of expensive scotch and rot. This is humiliating, isn't it? He whispered, his voice like silk. Look at you. Look at your husband. You are not capable of running this house anymore. Maggie, sign the papers, or next week. We will have you admitted to Briarcrest Haven. I hear the isolation wing is very quiet. I looked at him, letting a tear slide down my cheek for the camera. Please. I whimpered. I just want to stay home. Then sign. He hissed. Tessa clapped her hands to gather attention. She stood in the center of the room, raising a glass. I want to make a toast, she announced, to family, and to making the hard decisions to protect our legacy. I am announcing today that we are restructuring the Caldwell estate. We are going to ensure that the family assets remain with family, and that we cut out the outsiders who are just here for a free ride. She looked directly at Daniel. It was a public eviction notice. The guests clapped politely. Daniel stood up, holding the trash bag full of broken glass. He did not look at the floor. He looked at me. His eyes were burning with a fierce, protective anger. But he held his tongue because I had asked him to. The party ended 2 hours later. The silence that followed was heavy. I found Daniel in the kitchen, washing the trays in the dark. He looked up when I entered. They are going to file on Monday, he said, his voice rough. They have the video of you falling. They have the photos Grant took. They think you are finished. I walked over to him and took the sponge from his hand. I turned off the faucet. The darkness of the kitchen wrapped around us. Let them file, I said, my voice steady and cold, stripping away the stutter of the old woman I had played all night. They think they are putting me in a cage. Daniel. But they don't understand. I looked out the window toward the ocean, where the tide was beginning to turn. The day they think I am locked up, I whispered, will be the day they lock the door to their own prison. I walked into Briarcrest Haven not as a patient, but as an operative crossing enemy lines. Tessa signed the admission papers with a flourish, handing her credit card to the receptionist with the air of a martyr paying a ransom. She did not notice that I had specifically requested room 212. It was a semi-private room, not the luxury suite she wanted for appearances, but it had the distinct tactical advantage of being directly in the line of sight of the main corridor security camera. I also knew from my research that the head nurse on the floor, a woman named Sarah, had a contentious relationship with the administration. Once Tessa left, promising to visit on the weekend, I went to work. My roommate was a woman named Loretta Haynes. She was 67, a former school principal who sat by the window staring at the parking lot. She looked broken, but her eyes were sharp. I knew her file because Daniel had pulled the public records of North Point's previous victims. I sat on the edge of her bed while the nurses were changing shifts. "They took your house, didn't they?" I asked softly. Loretta did not turn around. "They took everything." My nephew said I was confused. The judge believed him. North Point fiduciary. I asked. Loretta turned then. Her face was pale. "How do you know that name?" "Because they are trying to do it to me," I said. "And I am going to stop them. But I need to know who pulls the strings." Loretta looked at the door, terrified. She leaned in close, her voice a trembling whisper. "It is not the lawyer," she said. "Slate is just the face. The money? It goes to a man named Malcolm Rusk. He calls himself an investor. He came here once. Told me if I stopped fighting, they would let me have a better room." The confirmation sent a shock through me. Malcolm Rusk. The man I had investigated 20 years ago was building a retirement fund out of the stolen lives of the elderly. While I worked on the inside, Daniel and Reba were moving pieces on the outside. Reba was cross-referencing Loretta's old bank statements with the shell companies we had identified. Daniel was driving to the county clerk's office, pulling physical copies of every guardianship petition Corbin Slate had filed in the last 5 years. We were not just building a defense, we were building a RICO case. I played my part perfectly. During the day, I shuffled through the hallways, asking nurses where the bus stop was, creating a theatre of confusion. But at night, under the heavy wool blanket, I wrote in a small notebook I had taped to the underside of my mattress. I logged everything. 8:15 in the morning, meds dispensed without checking ID. 2:30 in the afternoon, Corbin Slate called the nursing station. It was a forensic diary, accurate to the minute. On Friday, the trap sprang. Dr. Wallace Pryor arrived for a follow-up assessment. He was not there to check my health. He was there to generate the paperwork needed for the permanent hearing on Monday. He sat in the chair by my bed, looking bored. "Just a few questions. Maggie," he said, not even looking at me. Still feeling confused about your finances, I reached into my pocket and turned on the small digital recorder Reba had sewn into the lining of my cardigan. It was a legal recording in a one-party consent state. "Doctor," I said, feigning anxiety. "I am worried about my medical privacy. Does the lawyer see these notes? What about HIPAA laws?" Pryor sighed, closing his folder. He looked at me with the arrogance of a man who believes he is untouchable. "Look, Maggie," he said, his voice dismissive. "Don't worry about the laws. I just write what is in the file they gave me. It is easier that way. We just need to get this signed so your daughter can take over." I felt a surge of triumph. He had just admitted to falsifying medical records based on a lawyer's instructions. "I see," I said softly. "Thank you for being honest." That evening, Loretta knocked on my half-open door. She looked around the hallway, then pressed a bottle of vitamin D supplements into my hand. "Bottom," she whispered. "Unscrew the false bottom." I waited until she left. I opened the bottle. Hidden beneath the pills was a small silver USB drive. I worked in the office for a month before they fired me. Loretta had told me earlier. I copied the shared drive. It has the signature templates. They trace our signatures onto the consent forms. I clenched the drive in my fist. This was not just about saving my own fortune anymore. I looked at Loretta's slumped shoulders as she walked down the hall. I was going to burn North Point to the ground. I was going to destroy Malcolm Rusk, Corbin Slate, and anyone else who feasted on the helpless. They wanted a war with a confused old woman. They were about to get a war with a billionaire who had nothing left to lose. The data on the USB drive was not just a smoking gun. It was a map of the bullet's trajectory. Reba decrypted the files late at night, and her voice over the secure line was stripped of its usual confidence. She told me that my name appeared on North Point's target acquisition list, dated 2 years ago. I stared at the grey wall of my room. 2 years ago. That was 6 months before I met Daniel at the hardware store. That was before the wedding, before the so-called decline. They had not targeted me because I was a vulnerable newlywed. They had targeted me because they knew about the money. Who told them? I asked Reba. "Arthur Penhaligon," she replied. "Your old accountant at Halcyon. He had gambling debts. He sold a list of high-net-worth dormant accounts to Malcolm Rusk. The betrayal stung, but the next revelation shattered me. I called Daniel on the burner phone. I needed to ask him the question that had been gnawing at me since he recognized Corbin Slate so quickly. "Daniel," I said, keeping my voice low so the hallway nurses would not hear. "The list is 2 years old. You said you saw Slate during a fire investigation 10 years ago, but you also said you volunteered for the fraud unit when we met at the hardware store. Was that an accident?" The silence on the other end was heavy. It stretched for 10 seconds, then 20. "No," Daniel finally whispered. "It wasn't. I saw your name on a watch list at the volunteer center. I knew they were circling you. I came to the store to warn you. Maggie. That was the mission. But then you laughed at my joke about the paint thinner, and I fell in love with you. I couldn't tell you that our relationship started as a rescue mission. I was afraid you would think I was one of them." I closed my eyes. He had lied by omission every single day of our marriage. He had watched me, protected me, but he had never trusted me with the truth. "Did you ever love the secret of me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "More than you loved me, Maggie?" He started, his voice cracking. He did not finish. The silence was the answer. He had loved being the protector more than he had respected my right to know the danger. I hung up. I would deal with my marriage later. Right now, I had to survive my daughter. I dug deeper into the files Reba sent. I found a dossier on Tessa. She was not the mastermind I thought she was. She was drowning in debt. Malcolm Rusk had bought up her student loans, her car note, and her credit card debt. He held the leash, and he was choking her with it. He had promised her that if she delivered my estate, he would wipe her slate clean and give her control of the family legacy. But then I saw the document that made the room spin. It was a digital copy of Tessa's adoption papers from 34 years ago. I had adopted her as a single woman, a closed adoption. I had never known the birth family. But there, on the witness line for the agency, was a signature I had never paid attention to before Eleanor Rusk. I felt a chill that went down to my bones. Eleanor Rusk was Malcolm's mother. Had Malcolm placed Tessa with me on purpose decades ago? Was my daughter a sleeper agent planted in my life before she could even walk? Or was it just a cruel cosmic coincidence that Malcolm had leveraged? The ambiguity was suffocating. I requested a visitation. When Tessa arrived in the solarium, she looked brittle. Her makeup was perfect, but her hands were shaking. I did not hug her. I sat across from her, my hands folded in my lap. I know about the debts. Tessa, I said. Her head snapped up. I don't know what you are talking about. You are confused. I know Malcolm Rusk owns you. I continued, my voice hard as steel. I know he promised you the kingdom. But you need to understand something. Men like Rusk do not share. Once I am declared incompetent, he will liquidate everything. He will leave you with nothing but the guilt of what you did to your mother. Tessa's lip quivered. For a second. The mask slipped. She looked like a frightened child. I had no choice, she whispered, tears spilling over. He said he would take my house. He said he would ruin Grant. I just wanted to save us. You are selling your soul to a man who will leave you behind the moment the check clears, I said. He is not your savior. Tessa, he is your owner. I stood up and walked back to my room, leaving her weeping in the chair. I thought I had reached her. I thought I had broken through the brainwashing. But 10 minutes later, Reba intercepted a text message sent from the solarium. It was from Tessa to Corbin Slate. Mom is starting to suspect things. She knows about the debts. We need to speed this up. End it this week. I stared at the screen. My daughter was crying for herself, not for me. The betrayal was absolute. There was no family left to save. There was only the war. The notification arrived on my burner phone like a death sentence. Corbin Slate had filed the petition for permanent plenary guardianship. The hearing was set for Friday morning at 9 o'clock. It was exactly 72 hours away. It was day 30. They were punctual executioners. Grant made his move on the savings account I had exposed. Reba watched in real time as he transferred the $50,000 to a holding company controlled by North Point. He thought he was being clever, moving the money before the gavel fell. He did not know that the account was flagged with a triple-blind audit trigger. By moving that money before the guardianship was official, he had just committed felony wire fraud. The trap had clamped down on his leg, and he did not even feel the teeth yet. Then came Dr. Pryor's official report. It was a masterpiece of fiction. He described me as profoundly disoriented and unable to recognize immediate family. The phrasing was identical word for word to a report he had filed for another victim 3 months ago. He was copy-pasting his diagnoses. I touched the recorder deep in my pocket. I had his voice admitting he was just following orders. It was a dagger waiting to be thrown, but the enemy was not sleeping. At 2 a.m, I heard a commotion in the hall. 2 orderlies were wheeling Loretta out of her room. They were transferring her to a state facility across the border to silence her before she could talk to anyone legal. I called Daniel immediately, hiding under my blanket. They are moving her, I whispered, my breath catching in my throat. Get her. Daniel, I don't care about the law right now. If she crosses state lines, we lose her testimony. Daniel did not hesitate. He intercepted the transport van at the gas station down the road. It was not a kidnapping. It was a rescue. He took Loretta to a safe house Reba had prepared. We had our witness. Reba texted me the witness list for the hearing. My blood ran cold. Malcolm Rusk was listed as a special financial advisor to the family. He was coming to court to oversee the harvest personally. It was arrogant. It was perfect. I had one final card to play, and it was the cruelest one. I had to know, once and for all, where my daughter stood. I sent Daniel to meet Tessa with a document I had forged that morning. It was a handwritten will stating that I was leaving everything to Tessa, provided she protected me from Daniel's influence. It was bait. Tessa read it and immediately called Corbin. She did not come to save me. Instead, within an hour, she signed a prejudgment agreement with North Point. She pledged 40% of my estate to Malcolm Rusk's firm in exchange for expedited processing of the guardianship. She had just signed a contract to split the loot before the body was even cold. She was no longer a bystander or a victim of coercion. She was a co-conspirator. The night before the hearing, Briarcrest Haven was silent. I stood by the window, looking out at the black Atlantic Ocean. The reflection in the glass showed a frail, grey-haired woman in a hospital gown. But inside, the engine of the old forensic auditor was humming at maximum capacity. Tomorrow, I whispered to the reflection. They will learn exactly who the poor old woman really is. Morning came with a grey drizzle. I walked into the Briarstone County Courthouse, flanked by Corbin and Tessa. I shuffled my feet. I let my head hang low. I clutched my purse to my chest like a frightened child. They did not look at the purse. If they had, they would have seen the outline of the hard drive that contained their destruction. I took my seat at the defendant's table. I was ready. The courtroom in Briarstone County was cold and smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. Corbin Slate stood before the judge, projecting the video from the party onto a large screen. There I was, stumbling over the rug, shattering the glass, looking frail and confused. The audio filled the room with the sound of my daughter's guests laughing at me. "Your Honor," Corbin said, his voice dripping with faux concern. "As you can see, Mrs. Caldwell is a danger to herself. She is vulnerable to exploitation by her new husband, a man with no assets who has isolated her from her loving family." The gallery murmured. I saw the pity in their eyes. "Mrs. Caldwell," the judge said, looking down at me over his spectacles. "Do you have anything to say before I rule on the petition?" I stood up slowly, gripping the table with trembling hands. I looked at Tessa, who was dabbing her dry eyes with a tissue. I just want to go home." I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't understand why everyone is looking at me." I held the act for exactly 10 seconds. Then, I let go of the table. I straightened my spine. I adjusted my jacket and looked the judge dead in the eye. The trembling vanished. "Actually, Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and authoritative, projecting to the back of the room. "I would like to submit evidence into the record. We can label it Exhibit A." The silence that followed was absolute. Corbin froze mid-motion. Reba marched forward from the back of the room, slapping a thick binder onto the clerk's desk. This binder contains IP logs, confirming that North Point fiduciary accessed my bank accounts illegally. I stated. It also contains a timeline titled Caldwell Timeline Day, 1 to Day 30, recovered from Mr. Slate's own server. Objection. Corbin shouted, his face turning red. Overruled, the judge said, leaning forward. I pressed a button on the remote Reba handed me. The voice of Dr. Wallace Pryor filled the courtroom. I just write what is in the file they gave me. It is easier that way. That was the independent medical examiner admitting to fraud, I said. And as for Mr. Slate's concern for my finances, perhaps he should disclose that he is the majority shareholder of North Point Fiduciary, the very company he is petitioning to manage my money. It is not guardianship, Your Honor. It is racketeering. Corbin slumped into his chair. But I was not done. Daniel took the stand. He did not look like the handyman Tessa had mocked. He looked like the firefighter who had saved lives. He presented the surveillance footage of Grant photographing my safe and Tessa coaching me on how to act senile. He looked at Tessa, who was staring at him in horror. You were never the victim. Tessa, Daniel said, his voice heavy with disappointment. I tried to give you an out, but you chose. I stepped forward for the final blow. My daughter claims I am a poor, confused old woman. I told the court, the truth is, I am the sole owner of Halcyon Meridian Holdings. My net worth is in the billions. And the trust she is trying to access has a poison pill clause. If any attempt is made to place me under involuntary guardianship, the funds are immediately frozen and donated to charity. Tessa gasped. The colour drained from her face. But this, I said, holding up a piece of paper, is the real tragedy. It was the agreement Tessa had signed yesterday, promising 40% of my estate to Malcolm Rusk in exchange for a speedy verdict. Beside it was a blown-up image of her text message Mom is starting to suspect. Speed it up. You signed a contract to sell your mother for a payout, I said. Malcolm Rusk, sitting in the gallery, stood up to leave. Sit down. Mr. Rusk, the bailiff shouted. Reba handed the judge the USB drive Loretta had smuggled out. This drive contains evidence of 40 other seniors Mr. Rusk and Mr. Slate have defrauded, I announced, including the witness they tried to kidnap 2 nights ago. The judge slammed his gavel. Petition denied. Bailiff, take Mr. Slate and Mr. Rusk into custody immediately. I am referring this entire file to the district attorney. Pandemonium erupted. As the officers handcuffed Corbin and Malcolm, Grant tried to back away, stammering that he didn't know, but Reba was already handing the police the wire fraud transfer logs. He collapsed into a chair, putting his head in his hands. I walked over to Tessa. She stood alone in the center of the chaos, trembling. She looked at me, realizing that the victory she thought she had won was just a stage I had built for her execution. Mom, she whispered. I didn't know. You mocked my new husband because you thought I was poor. I said, my voice cold and final. You thought I was weak. But the thing you really lacked, Tessa, was integrity. I turned my back on her and walked out of the courtroom, my hand in Daniel's, leaving the ruins of my enemies behind me. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Drop a comment below and let me know where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear your thoughts on Tessa's karma and whether you think she deserved forgiveness. If you enjoyed this takedown, please subscribe to the Nora Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help get this story out to more people. Stay safe and watch your back.